Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it is my favorite kind of show, the kind where you do all of the prep and I just get to sit back and criticize you, Tony. It's everyone's favorite thing to do, picking on people over the internet. I cannot wait.
That's not exactly what this is, Tom, so let's not pick on me. Let's just have a discussion about Ohio State football. We did this a few weeks ago. I'm working on my 50 for 50 series of just previewing the college football season over the next 50 days. And one of the segments in there each time is an Ohio State prediction for this season. And so we went over some of those a couple weeks ago. We're going to bring out some more for you, Tom. I'm going to throw these out there. The thing with doing this is they've become more and more bold. Now, I know your bold and my bold are two very different bolds, but like you can't just say Ohio State's going to beat Western Michigan. So I could say that and that would be a prediction, but it's turned out like it's got to be a little bit more. I've got to up the ante on all of these things. So they're not out of the realm of possibility, but they're also not something that happens every year. And so the first one, Tom, I'm going to throw out there for you is something that hasn't happened since 2017. And for the person I'm predicting to have this happen, it has never happened for him before. And that is Caleb Downs, 3 interceptions this season, at least 3 interceptions, had 2 interceptions last year. The last deep safety for Ohio State to have more than 2 interceptions was Tom in 2017. Do you know? No, it's not Jordan Fuller. So it would be the other deep safety,
Isaiah Pryor?
Damon Webb, with 5.
Damon Webb. Oh, yeah,
underrated,
yeah.
underrated player. And if we want to go like the last time a free safety did this, that would be, of course, 1 year earlier, Malik Hooker with 7. So Caleb Downs will have at least 3 interceptions. What say you?
And he had how many last year?
2.
And if his left big toe had not been on the white paint at the Rose Bowl, how many would he have had?
3.
Okay, yeah, this feels like good. I hope we're going from least bold to most bold, because this feels like this feels the fact that an Ohio State safety has not done that, or a deep safety has not done that since 2017, feels much more like a statement on the quality of deep safety play at Ohio State in some ways than or at least where the scheme puts those deep safeties, than it does anything else. Yeah, this feels like I would be so mad if you put this in a bold prediction show, because it feels like such an absolute gimme. He's such a dynamic player. I think you're going to have the pass rush this year to force quarterbacks to get the ball out before they want to. I think you're going to have the coverage on the outside that's going to be, solid enough that you're going to have guys. You're probably going to get a lot of tipped balls, that kind of stuff. Yeah, this feels very, very likely to happen to me.
On a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of boldness, 10 being the boldest, 1 being your bold, where would you put this?
0.2.
Wow. How about 0.3 for the number of interceptions that he will have? Next one, Tom. This is something that Ohio State has not done since 2020. And no, I'm not predicting them to have Michigan back out of a game. That's not what I'm predicting. That would not be bold. Tom, this one's much bolder. Ohio State will rush for 200 yards per game this year, at least 200 yards per game on average this year, something they have not done since 2020. Last year was their worst rushing year since, I believe, 2003, which was a very bad year where they did not have Maurice Clarett and they had to rely on Lydell Ross and Mo Wells and Craig Krenzel, and it did not go well. This year, you've got I think the secret sauce in getting back to that 200-yard mark is a quarterback that will run the ball, because that's what they had with Justin Fields in 2019, 2020, when they destroyed the Big Ten on the ground in terms of leading the Big Ten in yard and rushing yards. So I think they're going to get back to that, not just because of the quarterback, but because of the running backs they have. And if Travion Henderson does go down, you can turn to Quinshon Judkins, because in the past when Travion Henderson would go down, you could turn to Mayan Williams for a little bit until he went down. Then you would have to turn to Dallin Hayden, Chip Trayanum, Xavier Johnson. Here, I think they're going to be better able to handle whatever comes their way.
I do have to correct you. They almost never turn to Dallin Hayden. That's one point of correction there. Uh, this is an interesting one because there are so many different pieces here that are different from last year, where, I think a lot went into Ohio State having a terrible rushing attack in 2023. Among them, the offensive line was not very good, and I think the offensive line is going to be better this year than it was last year. I think your running backs are better this year. Travion Henderson is going to be, Travion Henderson is still Travion Henderson. If he's healthy, he's great, and, it's a question of how often is he going to be healthy. But you've got your second back in Quinshon Judkins is better than whoever your second back was, whichever of the second backs you want to choose from last year. I think you've got a better second back there. You have the running quarterback, which I think adds a lot of a really dynamic piece to that running game, where that just forces them to defend one more player, gives you the +1 in the running game, as Urban Meyer always liked to say. And the last thing is you got Chip Kelly calling the plays, and Chip Kelly is much more of a run first guy. This is really kind of a lazy, a lazy statement, but I'm going to make it anyway, Tony.
Oh.
Ryan Day is much more of a pass first sort of mentality in the offense. He wants to run the ball too. I'm not saying he's forgetting about running the ball, but he is much more of a throw the ball guy by nature. Chip Kelly is much more of a run the ball guy by nature. And that's really a gross oversimplification, but it's also kind of true. So I think all of those add up to me to, yes, I think this is going to be, I think you're going to go from a uniquely bad season of running the ball at Ohio State to a pretty uniquely good, at least, unique over the last few years. So yeah, I think this is, it's sufficiently bold because it's a little bit of an outlier over the previous 4 seasons or so, but it's also, I think, something I could definitely see happening just for all those different factors that I listed.
I think Ryan Day likes to run the ball. People who say he doesn't, they have forgotten what Ohio State did with J.K. Dobbins. Any coach should like to run the ball with J.K. Dobbins, so that's not a crazy statement. I think they've got some guys here that are very, very coach friendly in terms of wanting to run the ball, and so we'll see that. Next one is something that has only happened 3 times in the last decade. Now, doing something 3 out of 10 times, Tom, we know that'll put you in the Baseball Hall of Fame. I don't know if it'll put you in the Bold Prediction Hall of Fame, but again, these are just regular predictions with a level of boldness. That is, Ohio State will have 4 players this year with 100-yard receiving games. It has happened in 2022, 2017, 2018, and I think 2022, the 4th guy was a Jaden Ballard. And 2017 or 2018, the 4th guy was a CJ Saunders. So that's what you're talking about, and getting all of those guys, getting that 4th guy there. And this year I could see it being Travion Henderson, perhaps, and with a couple of swing passes. We'll assume Emeka Egbuka, we'll assume Carnell Tate, we'll assume Jeremiah Smith. So now it's like Brandon Innes, we know, averages 58 yards a catch. Could it be Jaden Ballard getting his 2nd career 100-yard game? Could it be Bryson Rogers? Could it be G. Scott? So I'm saying it's going to be one of those guys. It could be Mylan Graham.
Yeah, this is one where I think it's another one that it feels likely that this happens because you've got 3 guys that feel like if they're healthy, there's going to be an Emeka Egbuka 100-yard game. There's going to be a Carnell Tate 100-yard game. There's going to be a Jeremiah Smith 100-yard game. And then you have so many opportunities for, Brandon and his catches. You saw him get the 58-yarder that you mentioned against Purdue last year. Obviously big play ability there. Mylan Graham, we talked about him on the last show. Mylan Graham, what are you going to have out of him? Like, I don't know. We really haven't seen a whole heck of a lot, but based on what the little bit that we have seen, are you telling me that Mylan Graham couldn't have a 70-yard touchdown against Akron or Western Michigan? It feels like you're going to have a big athletic difference out there when if you've got Mylan Graham out there in the 4th quarter against the 2nd or 3rd string defensive backs from Western Michigan. Like, it feels like you've got, potentially a mismatch there. And you've seen it. You mentioned the Jaden Ballard game against Toledo. That was like one long reception down the sideline and then a couple others. Bryson Rogers, you have all the positive stats that we hear about Bryson Rogers in practice. It hasn't translated to the field yet, but You're gonna see him out there. Obviously, they view him as an important part of this offense because they brought him back. They went proactively after him to bring him back. So they view him as a piece there. And Jaden Ballard, we have seen him do it before. We're still kind of waiting. I think the 2022 Toledo game, everyone went, aha, it's about to happen. And then here we are 2 years later, and well, it's about to happen, ? We'll see. But yeah, you've got so many talented guys there, and that doesn't even touch on, the Trevian Henderson, who had a 70-yard touchdown reception against Minnesota in his first game of his college career. We have not seen them use him a ton in the past game since, but that's obviously in there. Sam Williams-Dixon. You telling me Sam Williams-Dixon can't take a screen 70 yards? Sure, I could see that. So yeah, this is another good one, and this 4 times out of 10 years or whatever it would be if this happens. So no. 3 times, okay, 3 times out of 10. But yeah, I could absolutely see that happening. And this is a long enough season with enough talented receivers and enough talented skill guys that I could definitely see that one happening.
A 3-point bold prediction would be Caleb Downs having 100 yards and interception returns and receptions, and then maybe also rushing. That would qualify for at least 3 points, I think. The next one, Tom, and this could go a number of ways, but it is that, and you're going to scoff and you say, well, of course it's going to happen. A true freshman quarterback will throw at least 3 touchdown passes this year. The last time it happened was 2011 with Braxton Miller. And for this to really happen, you need to have this freshman quarterback, Julian Sayin or Aaron Nolan, and the way they played in the spring or the way they rotated, repped in the spring, you would put Julian Sayin there. If Julian Sayin is going to do this, he has to be almost has to be the backup quarterback, because the last time the third string quarterback at Ohio State threw at least 3 touchdown passes in a season was 1969. So,
wow.
Yes.
Wow. That's incredible. Boy, those are teams that did not throw the ball a whole heck of a lot. So that is really... Now, the 1969 team was kind of similar to this team in that it was loaded, in that it was not playing a particularly difficult schedule during the regular season. That was the Big 2 Little 8 era. And we're definitely not at that point where, Ohio State doesn't just play Michigan. They have to play at Penn State, at Oregon. You've got some difficult games on the schedule, but you've got plenty of winnable games on the schedule this fall as well. This one does feel pretty bold. Even before you gave me the 1969 stat, this does feel pretty bold because it's one that you think, Julian Sayin, he was good in the spring. Certainly, Tony, he will. He's gonna have a touchdown or 2 in each of the non-conference games. Like, of course he will. And then you go back to the history. It's like, no, a lot of times not. And if he's the third quarterback, it's, difficult to do, but doable. If you're the fourth quarterback, it's almost impossible. And we don't know yet what that depth chart's going to look like in terms of, Will Howard, Devin Brown, Lincoln Kienholz, Julian Sayin, or, however those names are going to be mixed up there. If Sayin is one of those top 4 guys, it feels like this might be kind of like low-key bold. Like some of your earlier ones, you can frame them in a way. It's like, oh, this hasn't happened in 5 years. It's like, yes, but it's obviously going to happen this year. This is kind of like low-key bold. It's the opposite of everything you've ever done on the show before. I could see it happening, but I think it's much less likely to happen than you would certainly think on first blush.
Yeah, I think a lot of things have to happen more so than just, hey, throw 3 touchdown passes. There are a lot of other things that must unfold here. But you could also see a game where he throws 2 in the fourth quarter, and then it's like, now you just have the other 15 or 16 games with which to throw a touchdown pass. But, I do think, I think when we're talking about guys getting 4 guys getting 100-yard receiving games, I think we're going to see them throwing the ball a little bit more later in games with other quarterbacks rather than just the starter, because you do want to, as we know, they're going to be running the quarterbacks and they're going to be they're going to be more carefree in terms of injury or whatever. Not that they want injury, but they're going to take some chances. And if you're going to do that, then you also have to have guys that have thrown the ball. and are, waiting in the wings. And so maybe we see some of that. And that all may also may be a result of not being as deep at running back. So instead of just running out the fourth quarter, you're like, well, sometimes we'll throw the ball out. We'll throw it out in the fourth quarter as well. The next one, Tom. Only 7 Ohio State Buckeyes have ever done this in the history of man. And so I'm saying Emeka Egbuka will become the 8th human being to do this for Ohio State. He will have at least 12 touchdown catches this year. He had 10 as a sophomore, only had 4 or 5 last year because of injury. I'm saying he will have at least 12 this year and join the ranks of 7 other Buckeyes. And I will give you a bonus point if you can name all 7 of those Buckeyes.
All right. So before I get to naming them, let me just say that remember all the stuff, the nice stuff I said about you in the last one and how it was like low key way. Yeah, this is if you drilled through the center of the earth and came out at the other side from this is low key bold, this is the point at which you would come out. It would be somewhere in the middle of like the Indian Ocean, I think, but you would be surrounded by water and a lack of boldness. Tony, how many of those 7 previous Buckeyes had a chance to play a 16 or 17 game schedule?
Well, let me count this real quick. And none.
None. Okay, interesting. Okay, well, listen. Who am I to say whether it's bold or not? It's it turns out I am the one to say whether it's bold or not, and it is not. And thank you very much. Yeah, the only thing someone is going to have 12 touchdown receptions on this year's Ohio State team, and it might be more than one someone based on the number of good receivers they have, the number of games they're going to be playing, the number of large wins they're probably going to have. Like you're gonna see significant touchdown totals from a bunch of guys on offense. I think it would be, naming one specific guy. Okay, that's if I'm going to give you credit for anything, it's naming one specific guy and not just saying, well, only 7 guys have done it. Someone does it this year. Naming one specific guy makes it a little more bold. But yeah, okay. So this 7 guys previously with. All right, I'm going to set the over/under at 3.5 for me naming guys before I name someone who did not do it.
Okay.
All right. So let's say I know Terry Glenn did it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure David Boston did it.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure Chris Carter did it. Oh, brutal. I blame Earl Bruce. Yeah. All right.
Now I have to go check. I don't believe he did because I did do this research myself.
Okay. Well, there you go. Bet the under. Yeah, I think it's there's a decent possibility he does that, especially given the length of the schedule and all that. I think there's a decent possibility you get 2 guys at 12 or more touchdown receptions this year. Just feels like you're playing so many more games. You're going to have, competitive games, especially the end of the season type games. You're going to have, everything from the Michigan game and after. So Michigan, potentially Big Ten championship game, 3 to 4 college football playoff games. You're talking 5, 6 games that are going to be close competitive games where you're going to need to be, you're going to have your starters on the field for most or all of the game. You're going to need to be scoring points in those games. So yeah, I think it's very likely you get 2 guys at 12. I'm more likely you get 2 guys at 12 than 0 this year.
Interesting. So the list is Terry Glenn, David Boston, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., and the 2 that you probably would never get in a million years because you're just not that smart. Devin Smith and Paris Campbell. The 2 guys that you kind of forget about in terms of, like Devin Smith, I think a third of his catches were touchdowns. And as we all know, whenever Devin Smith caught a touchdown, Ohio State won. And I don't know if I think 2 of those guys were in the same year. I think maybe Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave were in the same year. So maybe you'll see something that has only ever happened once. And maybe 3 guys will do it, Tom, as something that has never happened in the history of man. 3 Buckeyes with 12 touchdown catches.
Yeah.
Next one. Yeah, go ahead.
I would bet on 2019 for Olave and Wilson both having done it that year. That would be my guess. And this is an offense that I think is going to be comparable to that 2019 offense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a definite. And, again, playing an extra, they played, 14 games that year. So, yeah, potentially playing an extra two games, 3 games this year, that's gonna get you there, I think.
You know what? That was not 2019. And I don't know that it's ever happened. Chris Olave had uh, 12 catches in 2019. It was Olave and Wilson in 2021.
Okay.
Wilson had 12,
Oh, yeah,
Olave had 13.
that's right.
And
Because 19 was Wilson's true freshman year.
right.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
I was thinking he was the Severus Olave. You're right.
So, next one. The Ohio State Buckeyes will outscore their first 4 opponents by at least 138 points. Now, Tom, you're saying, why 138 points? Because that is the total number of points they scored in their first 4 games last year. So now I'm saying that is going to be at least a margin of victory over those 4 games. And you're talking, I think you're talking about a score of like 56-14 each week, which doesn't sound like 42-7, 45-14, something like that, which is certainly within the realm of possibility. But again, these aren't supposed to all be bold predictions, Tom. Now, they all have been extremely bold predictions. I'm just saying this one, just wanted to use go back to last year and examine the growth from last year to this year. Ohio State will outscore their first 4 opponents by at least 138 points. So basically by 35 points a game.
So last year, the first 4 games included at Notre Dame. This year,
Mm-hmm.
the big, tough road game. And it also included at Indiana, which, you're on the road. It's a season opener or whatever. This year, the big, tough road game is at Michigan State, who
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State has really been basically doing the magnifying glass and ant thing to on defense for about 6-7 years now. Feels like the last time Ohio State didn't completely torch Michigan State was the 2018 game where it was about minus 50 degrees up in East Lansing. Feels like there were some external factors that went into that. So yeah, I think this is a good one because the biggest thing that's going to help them this year is not just the offense is going to be better, but also the defense is going to be so much better this year, even better than last year. And last year's defense was pretty good. Last year, in the first 3 games, they gave up 3 points to Indiana, 7 points to Youngstown State, 10 points to Western Kentucky, and 14 to Notre Dame. I think you're going to be probably better than that this year against Akron, Western Michigan, Marshall, and Michigan State. I don't, then if I tell you, Tony, that the Buckeyes give up in the first 3 quarters of those games, so just quarters 1 through 3 of those first 4 games, the Buckeyes give up 17 points. I mean, that it feels like that's probably you're under. Like, where do I have to set that number for you to go over? 13, 10?
Yeah, I was thinking 2 touchdowns and then maybe 1 or 2 field goals. So I am with you. I'm thinking, like, what is the number to where you start saying, in terms of outscoring the first four opponents, is 160? Like, are we talking 40 points a game now? Because if they could outscore any of those opponents by 40, I think we would agree with that. The Michigan State thing, the way things have been there, you would expect that one to be that could be anything. But CJ Stroud is not walking through that door, so it's not going to be 56-0 at the half, perhaps. But where is the number in terms of total points, total margin of victory? Like, are we talking 170? Like, where,
Yeah, like I think 160 is a good number because
40
you're
points a game?
40 points a game because you can if you give up let's just you're going to give up a fourth quarter touchdown at some point because you got your fourth stringers in there. So let's say they give up 30 points in those 4 games, something like that. Then so you've got it to get to what did I say 160. So you got to get to 190. So you're basically scoring 48 points a game, give or take. 48 to you're averaging 40, 50 to 10 basically. Essentially 50 to 10 in those 4 games. That seems that seems like that's probably you're going to have one where they score 63, you're going to have one where they score 40. I don't think you're putting up I don't necessarily expect to see them put up 50 points at Michigan State, but that whole team is just kind of a mystery because they've completely remade the roster. You got an all new coaching staff. It's very early in the season. You want to play Michigan State early in the season this year because you just there's gonna be a lot of transition there in the wake of the Mel Tucker departure and Jonathan Smith arrival. So yeah, I think 160 is a good number there, and reasonable, fairly bold, not super bold even at 160, but I think that's a reasonable number to look at and say, yeah, they could do that. And I go back to 1996 where they won the first two games of the season 70-7 and 72-0. I don't think they're going to put up, I don't think they're going to be trying to put up 80 points on an in-state team like Akron, but I have no question that they could if they wanted to. But I think you're coming, you're easing off the gas pretty early there. You're getting 4 or 5 quarterbacks into that game. You're playing your fifth string running back a bunch. Like it's really a matter of what they want to do in those games, I think, more than anything else.
Well, there's a scenario where 138 points is kind of a disappointment. If you beat Akron and Western Michigan 35-0, 42-7, is that good enough? I think, does 42-7 look better than 35-0? Because at least you've gotten into the 40s and giving up one score is no big deal. But if you're only, how do you only score 35 points against Akron? This is supposed to be this amazing offense with all of these receivers and these running backs. And boy, I guess Will Howard wasn't the savior, was he? Only 35 points. Now, Tom, imagine one of those touchdowns is defensive. Then forget about it. This whole thing is a sham.
Well, you got to remember last year they only beat Youngstown State 35-7. I'm just going back through previous years, and they've had a bunch of these games where it's early on and you think, oh, they're going to win by 1 million, and they beat Tulsa 41-20, in 2021. They had, Tony, I will remind you, they were down 5-0 to Miami in 2019, but they beat Florida Atlantic 45-21 in 2019. There's a bunch of these early season games where in your head it's going to be, well, certainly they're going to score 1 million points and win by 1 million points, and Oregon State in 2018, yeah, they scored 77, but they gave up 31. It's always a little wonky, a little bit weird in those first 54-21 against UNLV in 2017. It's always just a little bit wonky, a little bit weird. The fourth team defense gives up a touchdown, and you come out a little raggedy just to start the season. So yeah, it's never quite as smooth sailing as, it probably will be for you on your PlayStation or Xbox in just a few weeks when you get to play those games yourself.
Last one. This has only happened once in the history of Ohio State football, and I'm gonna assume you can guess the year. But if I give you two, you'll definitely get it. At least 4 Buckeyes will finish the season with 500 yards receiving this year. And honestly, I could have made it 5 with the longer schedule, or 4 with 600. But at least 4 Buckeyes with at least 500 yards receiving this season. Again, Carnell Tate, Emeka Egbuka, you chalk those guys up. I'm going to go ahead and put Jeremiah Smith on that list. Then it just becomes, okay, who's that 4th guy? This one seems pretty simple. I would not be shocked to see it happen in the 13 games that we normally use to gauge a full season.
Yeah, this is a good one because 500 is more than you think. It feels like 500 yards, that's not that many, but and if you just go over, over the span of 13 games, even if we just take the 13 number, it's like, oh, well, that's only 40 yards a game or something like that. That's not very much, but you have to do that every week. And you're going to take a 0 sometimes. You're going to take a 1 catch for 7 yards because someone else had 8 catches for 137 yards. Like it is not as easy to pile those up as you think. And, sometimes guys get hurt. And when you've got a position of like wide receiver at Ohio State, they a lot of times will hold guys out sort of for precautionary reasons. So you miss a week here, you miss a week there. We call that the Julian Fleming problem. How many years did Julian Fleming hit 500 yards receiving at Ohio State? Like, it felt like every year it was like, well, I mean, certainly it's only 500 yards. And, I am going to guess he might not have ever done it, or he did it once.
533 in 2022.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So just barely in 2022. and that's it. And, that was the number one receiver in the country and a 5-star and, played at Ohio State for 3 years. And so, that's a guy who you would certainly expect to have done it, and he did it once. And you probably would think, yeah, he would do that every year. Of course, he would do that every year. So, yeah, 4 is a little bolder than, a little bolder than you think over the course of a 16-game season. Yeah, probably. But it just really is a matter of who is that fourth guy who steps up. Because I feel like the 3 guys you named are, yeah, probably. And then is there a fourth guy who steps up and is like, clearly, this is the top 4? Or is it, there's, 5 or 6 guys in a rotation, and it's just kind of 8 guys have 300 yards receiving, but only 3 have 500 yards receiving. It's a situation like that. So, yeah, I think this is a little bolder than you might think on its face.
Well, and a lot of these, what happens is the 4th and the 5th guy are have about roughly the same amount of yards. They'll have like 300 yards apiece. But the only team to do it, 2018, Paris Campbell, KJ Hill, Terry McLaurin, and Johnny Dixon, the low man, with 669 yards. So all 4 of those guys went over 600 yards. We'll see if 4 guys can do it this year. That will do it for this episode. Please go ahead and hit the thumbs up on this video if you're watching it on YouTube. We would appreciate that. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. And of course, subscribe to BuckeyeHuddle.com as we are getting ready. We are just weeks away, a couple of months away from the most anticipated college football season in history, and coincidentally, the most anticipated Ohio State football season in Buckeye history. So go ahead and join us now. Get ready for the season. It's going to be a good one. So that will do it for us today. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys tomorrow. No, and we'll talk to you guys later.